mysterious civilizations of human history flourished in the humid forests of the Petén in Guatemala some 2,500 years ago. Tikal, which means place of voices or place of whispers, is located 820 feet above sea level, covering an area of 223 square miles, out of which only 10 have been thoroughly scanned, revealing more than 4,000 structures. Tikal was discovered in 1848. In 1956, the University Museum of Pennsylvania inaugurated an 11-year study and excavation of Tikal. In 1955, Tikal was declared a national park by the Guatemalan government, and since then, the flora and fauna have been kept in their natural habitat. The area where the Mayan culture developed is especially rich. Tikal is surrounded by forests of fine and precious quality woods. More than 300 species of birds swarm around, along with an indefinite number of reptile and mammal species. The ramon tree was very important in the Mayan diet. The Mayas wrote their hieroglyphic codes on paper made from the pulp of the amate tree. Incense of exquisite smell and mystic sense, and indeed valuable to the Maya, were extracted from the copal tree to be used in sacred ceremonies. The ceiba tree was also sacred to the Mayas. Now it is one of Guatemala's symbols. The Petén is very famous for its chico zapote wood, which is extremely hard but smooth, as seen in door frames found in temples and palaces. The chico zapote tree also produces a soft, white, fragrant sap known all over the world as chicle, the basic ingredient of bubblegum. In 1979, Tikal was declared a monument of the patrimony of the natural and cultural world by UNESCO, now making it one of the most admired and visited places in the world. The Mayas made no distinction between a natural and supernatural world. Undoubtedly, this was an important factor that affected the development of their civilization. This same ideology guided all moments of their everyday life in a complete ecological embrace. The Mayan religious systems weren't very different, especially in matters dealing with the interpretation of human existence. A harmony with nature that was attributed to the gods was the way they understood life and the relationship between man and the universe. The Mayas had a privileged class of priests and chiefs. Only they understood art, astronomy, and architecture. Only they could make plans to build big monuments, and only they knew the meaning of the objects found inside the temples. They were capable of foretelling eclipses and making horoscopes. They lived splendorous lives. The Mayan culture did not consist only of priests and peasants. It was a stratified, complex, and cosmopolitan civilization. They had the wise custom of studying, discussing, and reflecting at length before arriving at their decisions. Their calculations were accurate. The movement of heavenly bodies was followed step by step, thus developing one of the most exact methods of measuring time. The Mayas built stone cities, splendid palaces for their kings, temples for their gods, and huge astronomic observatories. They invented a writing system and developed an outstanding calendar. This complex, called the Central Acropolis, is almost 700 feet long, east to west, and covers about 4 acres. It consists of 6 relatively small courts, surrounded by long, low-lying buildings. They are termed palaces to distinguish them and their characteristics from the temples. As one walks through the Central Acropolis, the levels of the various courts change in elevation. These courts are connected by intricate systems of stairways and passageways. A discovery beneath the Central Palace yielded an elaborate cache, including offerings of flint and shell objects, and many medallions of jade, shell, pyrite, and obsidian mosaic work. The whole manner in which the Acropolis grew by addition is suggestive of an expanding extended family or families of great wealth and power. For decades, it has been undecided whether the palaces seen in this court were or were not residential, and despite extensive excavation throughout the Central Acropolis, this question persists. It is a fascinating question. During the year 650 AD, this 5-story palace was erected near a ravine where the best natural water reserve could be found. The court is dominated by the imposing Mahler's Palace. Here, Tibert Mahler, the early explorer, lived during his explorations in Tikal in 1895 and again in 1904. Graffiti found on the walls of Mahler's palace, among the most interesting of Tikal, show scenes from ceremonies. How many nights did their astronomer priests spend in this lonely silence? How many nights were they illuminated by the same heavenly bodies that governed their destinies and those of their people? How many nights did they sit observing, recording, and computing? In the face of such wonders, the wisest people of today are still not able to explain it all. The North Acropolis is the single most complex structure excavated in the Mayan territory so far. One finds at the head of the Acropolis a row of stelas and altars, some sculptured and others not, which contain the dynastic history of Tikal. Entire structures are buried within the Acropolis, one over another. Over 12 layers of construction have been found to date. All of them appear to have functioned for religious ceremonies. Vestiges of as many as 100 buildings lie buried in this manner, the earliest dating back to around 200 BC. This is the single greatest concentration of early classic architecture known today. It is curious to note that when the Mayas constructed on top of another structure, they respected and preserved the masks of the gods found below. Under this structure, a tomb was found of one of the gloomiest burials ever recorded. The Mayan buried one of their priests, and for the occasion, 9 of his followers were sacrificed and buried with him. Turtles and a crocodile were also found in this bizarre tomb. The Acropolis had a history of more than 1,000 years, and its architecture was anything but simple. By now a hallmark of Tikal, this magnificently proportioned structure is popularly known as the Temple of the Giant Jaguar, after a motif on one of its carved lintels. This incomparable example of Mayan architecture, executed in limestone, was built around 700 AD. It is a huge pyramidal substructure with 9 sloping terraces. The number 9 was sacred to the Mayas. base of the roof comb is finished with stone blocks arranged to form an individual of monumental proportions, seated and flanked by elaborate scrolls and suggestions of serpents. The name Giant Jaguar comes from a lintel sculptured in Chicozapote wood. Tikal is famous for its fantastically carved wooden lintels. Temple 2, across the plaza from Temple 1, is known as the Temple of the Masks, after its richly embellished facade. This large platform served as a place from where the priests could observe the people and vice versa. Temple 2 consists of a three-terraced pyramid and stands about 120 feet high above the Great Plaza. The buildings appear to have been religious precincts, within which the theocrats interceded with the gods of rain, sun, wind, and corn. The Great Plaza, unquestionably the heart of ancient Tikal, has a history stretching back into the pre-Christian era. In the framework of a society where man was expected to cultivate his spirit, only in community did he experience the grandness that unites the cosmos. Temple 3 stands about 180 feet high and was built around 810 AD. It is known as the Temple of the Jaguar Priestess, after the scene portrayed on a lintel which depicts a grotesquely obese woman completely clothed in jaguar skin except for her hands, feet, and face. Temple 5, which measures over 186 feet tall, is the only one that is facing towards the north. Many speculate that it was used as an astronomical observatory. The Temple of the Inscriptions is covered with hieroglyphs, with text comparable to those found on monuments. These 7 closely adjacent, small, late classic temples set in a row provide the name for this large plaza whose history goes back centuries before the time of Christ. The restored central temple is the largest. This temple is particularly intriguing for its medial molding, heavily embellished with crossbones, a skull, and a skeleton. Along the south side of the plaza are 3 late classic palaces. Each corner of the upper facade is decorated by a projected human head, still partially visible from below. The central palace has a long gallery divided into walls that later became additions. This is a chultun, an orifice of 3 connected subterranean chambers made out of bedrock, where food was stored. Temple 4 is the tallest of all the structures in Tikal, standing 212 feet high. It was constructed in 741 AD. From the top, it is fascinating to observe the temples and the vast expanse of jungle surrounding Tikal. It is here that one feels the highest reverence for Tikal's magnificent and most noble past. While the rest of the world was still in the Dark Ages, there was a thriving civilization in Guatemala capable of developing a precise calendar and having an extensive knowledge of the heavens. Now, only the ruins remain. But these ruins have power, an immortality carved in stone, standing in silence and solitude. This is one of the pyramid complexes. 9 of these are known to exist in Tikal and are features unique to this site. These complexes mark 20-year intervals called katuns. A twin complex is made up of 2 essentially identical pyramids. Each pyramid has a stairway on each of its 4 sides. The east pyramid faces a row of 9 west-oriented stelas and altar pairs. This pyramid is still buried. It is not always necessary to dig into a surface mound to be able to know with some confidence what it conceals. On the other side of the plaza is a 9-door palace. At the north center of the plaza stands an enclosure known as a place to pray, which has a single doorway but no substructure or roof of any type. This is the famed Maya arch. Inside, we see a sculptured altar. This structure was built by one of the rulers named Chitam, who is portrayed here. It was carved and erected in 771 AD. A bound individual, presumably a captive, decorates the eroded top of the altar. The carved periphery shows seated individuals with interspaced matte design. The Lost World dates from the pre-classic Mayan age, more than 600 years before Christ. This is the Great Pyramid of the Lost World. Its height reaches some 98 feet, and, along with the western platform, it forms an astronomical observatory. The Lost World is of special interest because it is one of the most ancient Mayan cities. It is made up of more than 38 buildings, each serving a different purpose. Their astronomical, mathematical, and chronological findings turned out to be of real scientific value. Mind-boggling are the Mayan advances in architecture, sculpture, art, and mathematics. They had a computation of time as exact as those now in existence, and a knowledge of astronomy superior to the ancient Egyptians and Babylonians. If we consider these achievements in context of the scarce means of productions that the Mayans had to work with, we can't help but assume that they were, perhaps, the most brilliant civilization that existed on the planet. Their own history, recorded in stone monuments, indicate that the Mayas had reached an exceptional level of civilization many, many years before the time of Christ. Up to a few years ago, it was believed that these glyphs contained information purely on esoteric subjects, such as the calendar and the gods. However, modern scholars have been able to find the names of governors and many other fragments of history. Each year, facts are added, speculations offered, and tentative conclusions reached, all to be sustained or beaten down by another decade of research. It is an engaging, life-consuming process that is always committed to comprehending the causes and courses of civilization. The copious quantity of beautifully decorated ceramic vases allows us to follow the dynastic sequences in Tikal. In 1958, archaeologists found a deep well under Temple 1, which led to one of the richest tombs known to date. This is the skeleton of a notable governor who was adorned at his burial with a fabulous collection of jades, pearls, alabaster, seashells, polychrome jars and plates, and 98 engraved bones. Among all the findings at Tikal, Stela 31 is one of the most beautiful examples of sculpture ever found. A panel with 213 hieroglyphics shows that the Mayas were apparently looking for some kind of immortality in stone. The Mayans' origin is lost in the depths of mystery, as well as is the disappearance of this unique and magnificent culture. These images, taken from National Geographic magazine, help us to imagine just how was the civilization that left such an eternal imprint on our world.